Sometimes, the most terrifying truths don't come with a scream. They drift in quiet, almost gently, like fog rolling over forgotten waters. It was one of those mornings, gray, slow, eerie, when the ocean gave something back. A freighter, rusted, lifeless, drifting silently off the eastern seaboard. No crew, no signal, no name. It wasn't listed on any logs, hadn't sent out a distress call, and yet, there it was, towering against the horizon like a ghost. The Coast Guard approached with caution. They expected piracy, a fuel leak, maybe even a stranded crew in need of help. What they found was far worse. No one aboard, no signs of a struggle, just silence, and something else. The smell, not decay, not salt, but ozone, as if lightning had struck the very core of the ship, as if something unnatural had been left behind.
The ship's deck groaned underfoot as the team stepped aboard. Cameras on, weapons ready. The captain's log, torn in half, fluttered against a railing, its pages smeared with symbols no one recognized. Inside the control room, every dial spun slowly in place. The needles never settled, a constant hum pressed against their ears like an old radio stuck between frequencies. Down below, in the dark belly of the ship, the walls were coated with something black. Not paint, not oil, something dry, yet alive. It pulsed faintly when touched, and the closer they got to the engine room, the louder the humming became. No longer mechanical, but almost organic, breathing.
By the time they reached the core, their equipment had already begun to fail. Radios silent, batteries drained, cameras dead. One by one, the men stopped speaking. Not out of fear, but confusion. Words became harder to find, as if the very air filtered thought. The last transmission from the salvage crew was only 5 seconds long. It wasn't a mayday. I didn't panic. It was a whisper. One word, barely audible, stay. And then, nothing. Hours passed. Then a day. Then 3. No contact, no movement. Satellite scans showed the ship still drifting, untouched. A second team was sent in, this time with full biohazard containment, external comms, thermal imaging. They approached with drones first. But something strange happened. Every drone lost power the moment it crossed the railing, as if the ship rejected modern technology, as if it didn't want to be watched. What came next would never make it into the official reports. The families were told it was a tragic equipment failure, a malfunction, a freak storm that took them all. But inside the black box pulled from the deck, the truth whispered like poison. Hours of audio logs, static heavy breathing, voices repeating phrases that didn't make sense. It remembers, it waits. We are the echo, over and over again, a madness that settled into the lungs like mold. The ship was finally towed, reluctantly, to a classified military dry dock. Scientists, psychologists, linguists, all brought in. They tore the vessel apart from bow to stern. But what they discovered was worse than any monster. There was no sign of a crew, not even bones, not even ash, just empty uniforms, folded, neatly, as if placed there by hand. One in every room, as if the crew had vanished mid-thought, mid-motion, leaving behind only the suggestion of their existence. But deeper still, behind a sealed hatch marked in Cyrillic, they found something they weren't meant to find. Inside was a room untouched by rust or rot. Clean, sterile, a single chair bolted to the floor, chains broken, walls lined with thick soundproofing foam, and at the center, a journal. English, handwritten, no author, but the pages told a story no one wanted to read. A story of a Cold War experiment meant to bend time, to open a window, not into the past, but something sideways, something parallel. The journal ended abruptly with one final phrase, scratched into the last page with what looked like fingernails. We pierced the veil. It pierced back. The military sealed the room. The journal was taken, classified, hidden away. The ship, now considered a biohazard anomaly, was scheduled to be destroyed. But the night before the demolition, it vanished. Every guard on duty swore they saw nothing. Security footage went black for 11 minutes. When the feed returned, the dock was empty. No ship, no debris, just water, calm, still, waiting. Then came the boy. Weeks later, a fishing vessel off the coast of Iceland pulled a lifeboat from the waves. Inside, huddled in the fetal position, was a child no more than 9 years old, malnourished, shaking. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and he spoke with a slow, deliberate voice. "I saw them," he said. "They don't leave. They wait in the smoke." When questioned further, the boy could describe the ship in vivid detail. Every hallway, every hatch, the symbols, the humming. He'd never seen it before, never should have known it, and yet he did. Psychologists assume trauma, fabrication, imagination. But then the drawings came. Dozens of pages, each covered in the same impossible symbols found in the journal. The same markings that experts still hadn't deciphered. The same ones found burned into the floor of the control room. The boy said he dreamed of them, that in his sleep, they whispered, "Tell them we remember." He was placed under observation, protected, hidden from the public. But each night, he drew more. The whispers weren't just dreams anymore. The boy began to speak in his sleep. Surveillance footage captured it. Low, guttural murmurs in a language no one recognized. At first, they thought it was glossolalia, like what happens during deep trauma or possession. But when a linguist from Prague analyzed the sound patterns, her hands trembled. "This isn't random," she said. "It's structured, intelligent." She couldn't translate it, but she mapped the phonemes to old phonetic roots, some of which hadn't been spoken in over 4,000 years. Words that didn't belong in a child's mouth, especially not one who never left his village before that lifeboat. And then came the dreams. Not just his. One by one, researchers, guards, even government officials reported the same thing. Visions of a black corridor with walls that pulsed like lungs. A shadowed figure at the end, tall, still, watching. Every person described it the same way. No variation, no creativity. As if the dream was being broadcast, as if something had followed the boy home. They shut down the facility, moved him to a secure medical base buried in the Pyrenees. But it didn't help. The dreams followed. The boy had stopped eating by then, not out of protest. He simply said, "I'm full." But his weight dropped. His skin turned pale. Veins darkened. Doctors ran every test they could think of. Nothing added up. His organs were intact, yet his blood carried something foreign. Not a pathogen, not a virus, something electromagnetic, a frequency encoded into the red blood cells. His pulse, when measured, created patterns resembling radio signals, binary code, and when decrypted, they formed coordinates that pointed to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the same location where the ghost ship first appeared. They debated for days, whether to go, whether to leave it be. But human nature is rarely wise when it meets the unknown. A vessel was dispatched, a stealth reconnaissance sub outfitted with quantum stabilizers and a specialized electromagnetic hull. On board were scientists, soldiers, and a man named Dr. Halver, the same man who had once led the Soviet program rumored to be behind the original ship. He hadn't spoken publicly in over 30 years. When asked why he agreed to go, he only said, "Because it's calling, and it knows my name." They reached the coordinates in silence. Nothing on radar, no heat signature, nothing but black water and static. And then it surfaced. Not slowly, not like a ship, but like a living thing breaking through skin. No ripple, no splash. One moment, the ocean was empty. Next, the vessel was there, whole, towering, as if it had never left, as if it had been watching from beneath the waves, waiting for someone to listen again. And it wasn't rusted anymore. It was clean, polished, almost new, like it had been reborn. They boarded in silence. The team split into two units. One moved toward the control room, the other toward the lower decks. But something was wrong. Time shifted. Lights flickered in patterns that didn't match their watches. Audio logs played backward. One soldier reached the engine room and screamed. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. He said he saw himself, but older, with hollow eyes, staring back, wearing the same uniform, covered in the same dust. And then the doppelganger whispered, "It never lets go." Dr. Halper walked alone, as if he remembered the corridors, as if they were old friends. He reached the sealed hatch again, the one marked in Cyrillic, but this time it opened for him. Inside, the room had changed. No chair, no journal, just a mirror, cracked, stained, and when he looked into it, he saw a field, a red sky, and a shape too massive to comprehend. Crawling slowly across a blackened plain, he fell to his knees, wept like a child, and whispered, "We weren't the first." Contact was lost at 02:14 a.m. All external comms ceased. Internal logs scrambled. The sub returned 7 days later empty. Every system was wiped. Every backup was corrupted. But the ship was gone again. Only one object remained on board the sub, a single photo. It was old, sepia-toned, frayed at the corners. It showed a village, a man in uniform, and behind him, the same ship, docked in a port that no longer exists on any map. Dated 1897. The boy, now unresponsive, was moved to cryostasis. His vitals were stable, but his mind was somewhere else. Scans showed activity unlike anything ever recorded. Entire sections of the brain lit up in perfect symmetry. One researcher whispered, "He's listening to something." And then the facility went dark. 3 minutes of silence. Every backup generator failed. When the lights returned, the boy was gone. Not escaped, not kidnapped. Gone. As if he had never been there. His bed is still warm. The sheets still creased. But the air was cold. And that brings us here, to now. You won't find this story in books. You won't hear it on the news. It lives in whispers, passed between those who saw the black corridor, who woke up gasping for air, who remembers the humming. If you're hearing this, it means the ship is moving again. It never stays buried. It waits, in the silence between frequencies, in the shadows cast by fog, in the dreams of children who shouldn't know. And when it comes again, and it always does, it won't knock. It will just be there, like it never left. The world never noticed what was missing. No headlines mourned the sub. No satellite reports flagged the anomaly. But deep within classified vaults, men in suits with no names stared at blank monitors, waiting for signals that never came. Yet across the globe, something subtle shifted. A baby born in Reykjavik opened its eyes and spoke in perfect Russian. An old man in Morocco woke from a coma and drew schematics of a ship he'd never seen. And somewhere, far beneath the Pacific, seismographs recorded a pulse. Not a quake, not a tremor, a heartbeat. A code analyst named Marie was the first to see the pattern. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't cleared for deep operations. She was just good at puzzles. One day, while auditing old Soviet archives, she found a frequency buried in naval distress signals from the 1970s. At first, it was static, but when she layered them chronologically, it began to sing. A melody, 5 notes, identical to what the boy once hummed in his sleep. She played it on loop, listened for hours, and by the end of the week, she'd gone silent, quit her job, moved to a lighthouse in Iceland, and every night since, she lights the beam, not for ships, but for what waits beneath them. Governments began pulling threads, desperate for explanations. In a dusty basement in Bucharest, a Cold War map was unsealed. On it, red dots marked places where similar vessels had been seen. Not just one, many, scattered across time and history. 1923, even one in 1658, painted in the background of a Flemish oil painting. So detailed it showed the same rust patterns on the hull. Different oceans, same ship, or perhaps the same species, evolving, repeating perfectly. A theory emerged, whispered behind locked doors, that these vessels were not machines but carriers, shells, empty suits for something else, something that needed form to cross over. Every time one surfaced, something entered, a child, a dream, a thought, and the world changed slightly, as if it were being rewritten, line by line. Not enough to notice, just enough to alter course, to nudge history, and maybe to prepare it. Marie's lighthouse became a pilgrimage. People who dreamed of the corridor, who'd seen the tall figure in the fog, they found her, without knowing how, without speaking. They sat in silence, faces pale, eyes wide. All of them are drawn by that same humming, a hum no radio could catch. But if you pressed your ear to the earth, you could feel it, low, slow, like the turning of gears too large to see, a machine under the skin of the planet. In Moscow, a physicist named Alinov built a chamber, based on sketches found in an old journal once owned by Dr. Halver, a journal the public was told never existed. It used polarized sound and quantum mirrors to trap non-reflective energy, things that weren't light but moved like it. He called it the Echo Box. On the night he activated it, lights in a 5-mile radius dimmed, and when he looked inside, he didn't see himself. He saw the boy, but not as he was, older, wearing a black uniform, with eyes like polished coal, and behind him, the ship, floating in a sky that bled. They shut Alanov's lab down, burned it to the ground, buried the schematics, but his assistant, Irina, survived. She fled, disappeared, and 6 months later, in the Philippines, an entire coastal town vanished. No distress calls, no debris, just salt in the air, and on one half-buried dock, they found a black feather, 12 inches long, metallic, still warm. The ship hadn't returned, but it didn't need to. Its echo remained, in glass that cracked without cause, in animals that circled shadows, not cast by anything, in the sleepless who drew spiral after spiral until their fingers bled. Some say it moved underground, others say it was never real, just a reflection of something deeper. But those who'd seen it, truly seen it, knew better, because their dreams changed. No more corridors, just a door, closed, breathing. The boy's mother, if she ever existed, never came forward. But in a fishing village off Greenland's coast, an old woman was found, catatonic, repeating one phrase: "He is not our child, he is their messenger." When pressed, she pointed to the ocean, then bit off her own tongue. She died 2 hours later, eyes wide, mouth bleeding and smiling. And still, the world spins, ships sail, children play, but those tuned to the frequency feel it. A weight, like gravity, but emotional, a sense that something is watching from behind the stars, waiting, adjusting. The whispers have become stories, the stories, warnings. Don't go near the coast after midnight. Don't answer the voice that calls from under the waves. And never ever follow the humming, because what hums isn't alive, it's remembering. They say memory is what defines humanity. But what if memory could be borrowed? What if every dream wasn't yours but something passed to you, carried like a virus, embedded like a seed? The survivors, those who touched the black metal or stood too close to the boy, began remembering things they never lived. Battles in oceans that never existed, a planet with twin moons, a war that ended before Earth had formed, and always the ship, silent, observing, as if it wasn't just traveling through space, but through memory itself. In Brazil, a 7-year-old girl painted the ship with impossible precision. Every bolt, every scorch mark. Her parents were speechless, but it wasn't the drawing that terrified them. It was the text beneath it, not in Portuguese, not in any Earth language, but perfectly matching the ancient carvings found on obsidian monoliths in Antarctica just 6 months earlier. Carvings carbon dated to be older than the last ice age, identical, line for line. The Vatican got involved, quietly. A secret council convened, not of theologians, of linguists, astronomers, even AI developers, because the symbols weren't just language. They were instructions. They formed algorithms, blueprints, not for machines, but for thought. Thought that could be installed, like code, like infection, as if Earth wasn't being invaded, but rewritten. And the ones who heard the humming, they were the first to update. A doctor in Kenya recorded a patient murmuring in her sleep. Over 17 nights, the whispers aligned perfectly with low-frequency pulses recorded from the Challenger Deep Earth's deepest trench. They created a waveform, a perfect sine curve. When that curve was played through water, the liquid rose unnaturally, rippling not from vibration but from attraction, pulled as if responding to a name. That same night, all the fish in the tank turned belly up, their eyes pointed toward the sky. Back in Iceland, Marie lit the beacon again. The sea was calm. The sky is clear. But she wasn't looking for rescue. She was waiting, and on the 100th night, it came. Not the ship, something smaller, a sphere, glassy, organic. It hovered above the lighthouse without sound. Marie walked to it, touched it, and disappeared. No smoke, no scream, just a breathless moment, then absence. The sphere collapsed into light, and vanished with her. They found no trace, except a single note left on her desk. He remembers everything now. Panic took shape in secret. Countries buried evidence, killed witnesses, but they couldn't kill the truth. It moved like fog, slipped through screens, whispered through wires. People started dreaming together. Thousands and millions. All the same corridor, all the same figure. But this time, he turned to face them and spoke. "You've made it far, but not far enough. The test begins soon." A comet appeared. Unexpected. No orbit. No trajectory. It pulsed with radio signals that mimicked a 5-note melody. And it wasn't approaching. It was waiting. Stationary, above the southern pole, observatories across the globe confirmed it wasn't made of rock or ice. It was made of something reflective, something to watch. And beneath it, the aurora borealis turned crimson. The skies bled, and then the lights went out. Entire power grids failed. Clocks reset. GPS collapsed, but only for 13 seconds. When they came back online, every smart device worldwide displayed the same image. A corridor, endless, with a single door at the end. Users tried to turn it off, but it returned until the door opened. No one saw what was inside. Only that once it did, they heard the humming, and then silence. No one remembers exactly what happened next. Time stuttered. People reported losing hours, some sad days. But when the world came back into focus, things had changed, just slightly. Landmarks were in the wrong places. Stars twinkled in different patterns. Entire families swore their children had different eye colors. And in the Pacific, near the Mariana Trench, a new island had surfaced. Black, smooth, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat. Now they wait. The ones who remember. The ones who dream. They know the ship isn't gone. It never was. It was always here. Beneath, within, a part of the planet itself. Or maybe the planet is a part of it. And the boy, he was never lost. He was delivered. A message in flesh. A countdown in skin. And now that the door has opened, all we can do is listen to the humming, to the silence between the stars, because whatever sent him is coming back. And now that the door has opened, all we can do is listen to the humming, to the silence between the stars, because whatever sent him is coming back.